Thank you for joining us today to learn how we can use your data to show the difference that Apargo can make to identify the goals of your practice and then operationalize them at the time of appointment scheduling. The content that we're going to review today is an abbreviated version of our full study. The full study contains about 40 key metrics. Let's learn more about the analysis. Every analysis starts with 12 to 24 months of your practice's data. Think of that data as starting the second that the patient requests the appointment. How long was that in between when they requested it and actually received care? How were they referred to your practice? Who was it scheduled with? What was it scheduled for? How long was the appointment? What CPTs were generated? And how did different insurance carriers reimburse for the exact same things? We then slice and dice that data into the 4 key efficiency metrics that we mentioned earlier. Those metrics vary from how long are patients waiting to receive care, what trends are we seeing around your no-shows, cancellations, and last-minute reschedules, how well are your resources utilized, where are the lion's share of your referrals coming from, and which ones represent the highest average revenue. We're also going to identify actual demand of when patients schedule appointments and how to better align those with your provider's schedule templates. This first analysis takes a look at how far in advance are patients scheduling an appointment. The graph at the top takes a look at the practice whole and says, okay, 4.4% of the appointments are scheduling same day, and 4.8% of the appointments are scheduling the day before. If we take a more granular look, we can see that on average, new patient appointments are waiting 15 days to receive care. When we talked to this practice, they were certain that new patients were receiving appointments the same day or next day. They definitely have appointments that are receiving same day, next day for new visits, but on average, those new patient appointments were waiting 15 days. This can be hugely impactful to a practice because if a patient has to wait too long for care, they may choose to receive it elsewhere. Apargo takes this data and chooses how to optimize visits based upon the practice's goals. Let's make sure that patients who need care the most receive priority appointments. We also spend a good amount of time taking a look at how far in advance appointments change. In our world, we define change as a cancellation, a reschedule, and of course, a no-show. We think a rescheduled appointment is almost as bad as a no-show if it's happening at the last minute. You might not have the demand to backfill that appointment availability. In this analysis, we can see that 37% of the appointments change the day of or the day before. That's significant. We're also analyzing what are the reasons for change. Are your doctors changing your appointments often because they're rearranging their schedules? Or do you have a lot of cancellations from the patient? We're also taking a look at what time of day are we seeing trends around those changes. So we'll provide this information to you at a practice level and then also per provider that holds a schedule. So in this example, we can see that the 9 to 10 o'clock time is the time where most patients change their appointments. So we might choose to make some different decisions about how appointments are scheduled. We're now blending appointment data with billing data, and we're taking a look at the CPTs that were used most often, and then what was the variant between the lowest reimbursing insurance carrier to the highest. In this example, an arthrocentesis was performed 3,300 times with a variant of reimbursement between $173 and $807. This practice also performed a shoulder scope 154 times, and that range in reimbursement was between $1,200 and $4,300. Again, I'll ask, why does this matter? It matters because, remember, this is the same practice whose new patients were waiting 15 days on average to receive an appointment. If we prioritize patients who need care the most and have a higher likelihood of surgical conversion and take advantage of your ancillaries, as well as promoting payers that represent the higher end of reimbursement, Think about the incremental revenue increase that your practice can make just by identifying the goals of the practice and providing that information to the schedulers at the point of scheduling. The same data is used to compare physicians' performance against one another. This metric is taking a look at a 5-minute scheduled block and what was the actual allowed, how much was the provider paid for that block. And then how does their performance compare to like physicians? We can see in this example that one of the providers received $1.3 million in actual allowed. They worked 28,000 blocks. Well, let's compare this to their peer. Their peer received an actual allowed of $1.4 million, but look, they worked 1,000 fewer blocks. That's definitely practicing smart. So our plan is to take this classic bell curve and move providers over to the median level of efficiency by prioritizing patients who need care the most, that represent a higher likelihood of surgical conversion, or maybe taking advantage of more of your ancillaries. There seems to be a big mystery around how doctors should configure their appointment templates. We've decided to remove some of that mystery by giving you a very detailed look at which types of patients schedule when. In this analysis, we're looking per provider per day of the week, how many of each appointment types were actually scheduled. So how many new, how many established, how many injections, whatever those appointment types that you use in your current practice management environment will provide the analysis. How can we use this data to make a difference? Well, let's compare the actual demand to the templates that they have in place. If the data tells us this doctor has never seen more than 25 new patients in a day, and they have 30 new patients on their template, it's likely that some of those new patient slots need to be moved from new patient to an established visit. But the provider says, no, I really feel like I can get 30 new patients. You have never in the history of ever had more than 25. And P.S., you always run behind. So let's go ahead and make those template changes based upon data. Lastly, we're going to use this data to show, should you decide to move forward using optimized scheduling, what the incremental revenue increase might look like for your practice based upon your data. So for this practice, if they prioritized care for patients who need it the most, brought their providers to the median level of efficiency, better managed their referrals, and then also allowed patients to start scheduling some of their own appointments through Follow My Health, there was a significant opportunity for incremental revenue increase. I hope this information has been informative and gave you a good look into some of the ways that we can use your data to really paint a picture and identify the practice's goals so that we can strategically schedule based upon those identified goals.